I'm Nora Bennett, 28, and at Thanksgiving dinner, my mother handed out gifts like she was dealing cards in a game everyone else had been invited to play. A velvet box went to my sister. A new watch went to my father. My aunt got a spa voucher. My cousin got concert tickets. Even my mother's neighbor's kid, who had only stopped by to drop off pie, walked out with a gift bag and a grin. Then my mother looked right past me, reached for the gravy, and said, like she was commenting on the weather, "Oh, please, be grateful you can sit here." My aunt laughed before anyone else did and added, "Be glad we still remember your name." That broke the room open. Forks paused. Shoulders shook. Someone actually slapped the table. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I just folded my napkin, looked around that table like I was seeing it clearly for the first time, and said, "Oh, good to know." That should have been the end of the humiliation. It wasn't. Because what people don't understand is that moments like that never start on the holiday, they explode. They start years earlier, in smaller rooms, in smaller insults, in 100 little decisions that teach one person in a family they are useful, but never precious. And 1 week after that dinner, 7 days, almost to the hour, the same people who laughed were on my Philadelphia doorstep pounding hard enough to rattle the glass, yelling that they needed me to open up right now. Not because they suddenly found their conscience, not because they missed me, because something had already started falling apart, and for the first time in my life, I let it. Before I tell you why they came, and what exactly they wanted from me, tell me what time it is where you are, and where you're watching from. I always wonder how far stories like this travel. My mother's name is Linda Bennett. My father is Mark. My younger sister is Paige. And the aunt who laughed first that night is Denise Mercer, my mother's older sister, the woman who has spent 20 years turning cruelty into family humor and acting offended whenever anyone calls it what it is. If Thanksgiving had been a one-off, maybe I could have swallowed it. But that dinner didn't hurt because of the missing gift. It hurt because it made something public that had always been private. In my family, I was never the daughter who got celebrated. I was the daughter who got assigned. Paige got praise. I got errands. Paige got, "You deserve this." I got, "You're so capable." When I was 16 and won a statewide design scholarship, my mother missed the ceremony because Paige had a choir solo. When I was 22 and landed my first major lighting project restoring a historic theater lobby, my father congratulated me by asking whether I could also take a quick look at the lighting plan for the family's annual charity house tour. "You're better at this sort of thing than we are," he said. That became a pattern. Every December, my mother and Aunt Denise ran the Bennett Mercer Holiday House Tour and Winter Scholarship Auction in our hometown outside Philadelphia, a glossy event people in town loved to call a family tradition. What they never said out loud was that I was the one who made it look polished. I built the donor website. I drafted the sponsor packets. I lit the showcase homes. I designed the event graphics. I stayed up fixing payment links while my mother took photos in a red coat and posted captions about family, generosity, and grace. Thanksgiving was the first time they forgot to pretend I mattered while I was standing in the room. 2 days later, I saw my mother's Facebook post. A perfect photo of the table, all warm candlelight and smiling faces, captioned, "Nothing matters more than having my children home." I wasn't in the frame. Not cropped out by accident. Gone. Then I saw something else. My cousin had uploaded a short story that night from the far end of the table. The clip was only 12 seconds long, shaky and half obscured by a wine glass, but the audio was clean. My mother saying, "Be grateful you can sit here." My aunt laughing. Me answering, "Oh, good to know." She deleted it by morning. Too late. I had already saved it. I sat in my apartment with my laptop open and finally asked myself the question I should have asked years earlier. Was I actually loved, or was I just the easiest person to use? And once that question lodged in my chest, everything else became clear. I called my best friend, Tessa Hall, and for the first time, I didn't defend my family. I told the whole truth. She went quiet for a second and then said, "Nora, they don't panic when they hurt you. They panic when they lose access to you. There's a difference." That sentence changed the week, because I didn't make some impulsive, dramatic decision in a coffee shop. I made a deliberate one. I opened every folder connected to the holiday fundraiser. I checked what belonged to me, what had my name on it, what payment systems were linked to my business accounts, and what legal permissions I had given over the years without thinking. Then I drafted one calm, professional email. Effective immediately, I was withdrawing from all planning, design, vendor coordination, web administration, and donor communications related to the Bennett Mercer Holiday House Tour and Winter Scholarship Auction. Any future use of my work, business accounts, images, lighting plans, or name was unauthorized. I copied the committee chair, the printer, the florist, the venue manager, and the bank processor. Then I blocked my family group chat, turned off my phone, and decided something else at the same time. I would not be coming back for Christmas. Have you ever spent years trying to earn tenderness from people who only ever rewarded your usefulness? Because once you see that pattern, it's almost impossible to unsee. The first person to respond wasn't my mother. It was Paige. Of course it was Paige, because Paige had been trained all her life to be the soft face of whatever my mother wanted. Her text came 8 minutes after my email went out. "Nora, what are you doing? Mom says you're overreacting and embarrassing everyone." I stared at that word, embarrassing, because that was always the family rule, wasn't it? Their cruelty was private. My reaction was public. I wrote back, "No, I'm refusing to keep my work under people who don't respect me." She sent 3 dots, then nothing. A half hour later, the florist emailed me saying she could no longer process invoices without an authorized replacement because the last 4 years of event billing had been routed through the design management portal attached to my company. The printer wrote next, then the house tour coordinator, then the scholarship treasurer. Every message said some version of the same thing. They had assumed I was leading operations because my name was on the planning deck, the donor portal, and the sponsor packet. That's when I realized just how long my family had been using my credibility as part of their brand. My mother hadn't just leaned on me behind the scenes. She had built public trust on top of my labor and let people assume I endorsed everything. Tessa came over that evening with Thai takeout and a legal pad, because that's the kind of friend she is. The kind who brings food and asks practical questions when your life is cracking open. She works in municipal records and sees enough nonprofit paperwork to know when something smells off. We sat cross-legged on my living room rug going line by line through old event files, reimbursement summaries, vendor quotes, archived invoices. The longer we looked, the uglier it got. My Aunt Denise had submitted duplicate reimbursements the year before for the same floral installation under 2 different budget categories. My mother had used donor hospitality funds for things that definitely were not donor hospitality. Salon services, boutique clothing, a hotel stay the weekend after the event. And because most of the digital records passed through my systems first, copies had landed in folders linked to my email. Not because I was spying, because I was the one doing the actual work. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the discovery that my mother had been presenting one of my lighting concepts, something I'd built for a restored carriage house display, as Denise's creative idea in sponsor meetings. I found the deck. I found the notes. I found Denise's little comment in the margin on one exported PDF. "Don't mention Nora unless they ask. Keep it simpler. Keep it simpler." That's a nice phrase for erasing a person while still billing people off her talent. The next morning, I did one more thing. I emailed the committee chair directly, a woman named Eleanor Pike, and told her with complete professionalism that I was stepping away and needed my name removed from any fundraising materials immediately. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I attached a list of the assets I controlled and a transition note. Eleanor responded in 12 minutes. I'm surprised. Linda said your role this year was minimal. Minimal. I actually laughed out loud. Then the phone calls started. First my mother, then my father, then Paige, then 2 family friends who had no business contacting me at all. By evening, my Aunt Denise left a voicemail that said, "You need to stop this stunt before people get the wrong idea." I played that message twice. The wrong idea. Not the truth. The wrong idea. So I did what I had never done before. I stopped cushioning them from consequences. I didn't return the calls. I revoked my business payment credentials from the event site. I moved the archived design files off the shared drive. I notified the web host that the family was no longer authorized to use my commercial templates. Then I sent one final message to the family group chat before muting it completely. Since I should be grateful just to sit at the table, I assume you won't need the daughter whose labor built your event. Please direct all future questions to someone you actually value. No profanity, no melodrama, just truth. And truth, it turns out, is a lot louder than people expect when they've spent years depending on your silence. By Monday, concern had become panic. My mother texted 6 times before 9 a.m. The first message said, "Call me, this has gone too far." The second said, "People are asking questions." The third said, "Why are you punishing the whole family over a holiday misunderstanding?" That word again? Misunderstanding. As if I had somehow misheard a room full of laughter. By noon, I knew the real problem wasn't that I had gone quiet. It was that the event was wobbling in public. The donor page had been temporarily disabled because the payment processor on file no longer matched the authorized manager. A sponsor wanted clarification on who was overseeing production. Someone on the committee had noticed that the printed materials listed me as Liad Design and Operations Coordinator, while Linda had recently told people I was barely involved this year. Contradictions have a way of making polite people suddenly become very curious. Then my father, Mark, video called me. Against my better judgment, I answered. He wasn't at home. He was standing inside one of the tour properties, a decorated colonial house with ladders in the background and half-hung garland behind him. His face looked tired, but not sorry. "Nora," he said, like he was trying to sound gentle and reasonable. "Your mother is beside herself. We need to sort this out quietly." Quietly. There it was again. Not rightly. Quietly. I asked him one question. "Has anyone apologized to me for Thanksgiving?" He blinked. Behind him, I could hear my Aunt Denise's voice snapping at someone about centerpieces. My father lowered his eyes and said, "That's not the point right now." I almost admired the honesty of that answer. It wasn't the point right now. Their fundraiser was the point. Their reputation was the point. Their image was the point. I said, "Then I'm not the point either. Not to any of you." He started to argue, but I ended the call. That evening, the saved Thanksgiving clip spread without me lifting a finger. I didn't post it. I didn't send it. But small towns have a funny way of turning deleted things into circulating things, especially when the people in them spend all year marketing themselves as warm, generous, faith-driven pillars of the community. By Tuesday, Tessa texted me screenshots from local Facebook comments under my mother's event promo. Didn't someone say Linda excluded her own daughter at Thanksgiving? Is the family having some issue? Who runs the scholarship money? My mother responded the way she always did when control slipped. She began telling relatives I was stressed, exhausted, not myself, going through something. It was such a familiar tactic, I almost felt embarrassed for ever having fallen for it. You don't have to call a woman crazy outright if you can just suggest she's emotional enough that no one should trust her version. Paige texted me late that night. Mom's crying all day. Aunt Denise says you're trying to destroy the family. I typed back, no. I'm refusing to keep holding it together for people who only notice me when something breaks. She didn't respond for hours. Then finally, I didn't know your name was on all of it. That message sat with me because Paige had benefited from the same system, but maybe she hadn't understood the machinery underneath it. Maybe she'd never had to. The next morning, my mother left me a voicemail that cracked something open, not because it was sad, but because it was so revealing. She said, "You have no idea how humiliating this is for me. Not how painful, not how wrong. Humiliating." That's when I knew exactly what would happen next. They weren't going to reflect. They were going to mobilize. Because in families like mine, shame doesn't lead to accountability first. It leads to a siege. And I remember sitting on the edge of my bed thinking, when they come, what they'll really be asking is not, "Why are you hurt?" It'll be, "How dare you stop absorbing the damage?" So tell me this, when people say they miss you, do they miss you, or do they miss the role you played in keeping their life comfortable? They came the following Saturday, just after noon, in the kind of cold that makes every knock sound sharper. I was at home in thick socks, halfway through reorganizing a supply cabinet, when the pounding started. Hard, fast, not neighborly, not a doorbell, a demand. Then came my mother's voice through the wood. "Nora, open the door right now." My stomach dropped, but not from fear, from recognition. I knew before I reached the entryway that they hadn't driven 90 minutes to Philadelphia because they suddenly understood what they'd done. I looked through the peephole and saw all four of them crowded on my stoop. Linda in a camel coat with her lipstick already worn off around the edges, Mark holding a banker's box full of papers, Paige tense and pale, and Denise standing slightly back with her jaw set like this was all somehow my fault. My aunt hit the door with the flat of her hand and shouted, "This has gone far enough." I opened it with the chain still on. "You need to leave," I said. My mother's face crumpled instantly into something theatrical and urgent. "We need to talk. Please open up." Mark lifted the banker's box a little as if that explained everything. Denise cut in before I could answer. "The committee froze reimbursement approvals. Eleanor thinks there are discrepancies. We just need to clear this up." There it was. Not, "We're sorry." Not, "We were wrong." We just need to clear this up. I looked at the box and understood. They needed signatures, explanations, endorsements, maybe even a scapegoat. My mother lowered her voice. "Please, Nora, not out here." That almost made me laugh. Public humiliation only mattered when it was theirs. I unlatched the chain and let them into the narrow foyer of my row house, but I didn't invite them to sit like guests. I stayed standing. They filled the room with cold air, expensive perfume, and the old assumption that I would eventually do what was needed to restore the family to comfort. Denise was the first to speak once the door shut. "This ridiculous Boundary Act has already damaged the auction. Donors are nervous, the committee is suspicious, and people are gossiping because of that stupid clip." I folded my arms. "Interesting that you call my boundary the problem and not what was actually said." My mother stepped toward me. I was joking. "No," I said. "You were telling the truth in public." Paige flinched. My father set the box on the console table and opened it. Inside were printed budgets, reimbursement forms, vendor contracts, and a stack of sponsor letters. "We just need you to explain that you were still overseeing transition," he said carefully, "and that those expense issues are administrative errors. Eleanor trusts you." That sentence landed exactly where it was meant to. Eleanor trusts you, not us. You. There was the whole family system in one line. They had finally come to my door not because they had found their hearts, but because they had run out of clean hands to borrow. My mother tried again. softer this time, tears gathering right on cue. Please don't do this to us right before Christmas. I looked at all of them, really looked, and felt something settle in me with surprising calm. For years, I had mistaken the moment before confrontation for weakness, because my body would shake. But sometimes your body shakes because it knows a door is finally closing behind you. I said, "You didn't come here to talk about Thanksgiving. You came here because your event is collapsing and you want me to crawl back under it and hold up the floor." Denise snapped, "For God's sake, stop being dramatic." I answered, "No, you stop pretending this is love." And that was the moment the room changed, because all at once they understood I was not going to make this easy, private, or cost-free for them anymore. My mother sat down without being asked, one hand pressed to her chest like she was the injured one. My father stayed standing near the paperwork. Paige hovered by the doorway between the hall and the living room. Denise didn't sit at all. She paced, which is what people do when they know the facts aren't on their side and hope movement will look like confidence. Mark slid 3 forms toward me. "If you sign these," he said, "we can verify vendor approvals and release the hold. Then we can deal with the family stuff separately." I stared at him for a long second. That was the line, wasn't it? Fix the public mess first. Feel your feelings later. I pushed the papers back untouched. "No." My mother's voice sharpened immediately. "Nora, you are not blowing up a scholarship fund because you're upset over a joke." I met her eyes. "I'm not blowing anything up. I stepped away from something built on lies." Denise gave a harsh laugh. "Lies? Don't flatter yourself. You were helping the family like everyone else." I turned to her. "Should I start with the duplicate floral reimbursements from last year? Or the donor hospitality charge that paid for your hotel and spa weekend?" The room went dead still. Paige looked at Denise so fast I heard her earring click against her coat collar. My aunt's face actually lost color. My father muttered, "Nora." But I wasn't done. I went to my desk, pulled out a folder, and laid copies on the coffee table. I have the invoices. I have the payment logs. I have the export trail from the admin system attached to my business email. I also have the sponsor deck where one of my designs was presented as Denise's concept, with a note saying, "Not to mention me unless someone asked." My mother stood up then, furious. "You went digging through family records?" "No," I said evenly. "I worked. That's how I found them." That's the part all of you keep forgetting. I'm the one who actually did the work. Paige took a step toward the table, reading the top page with her lips parted. "Mom," she said quietly. My mother didn't look at her. Denise recovered first, the way bullies do when cornered. They try contempt. "Everyone shifts expenses. That's how events work." "Not charitable scholarship events," I said, "and not under my name." My father rubbed his forehead. Nothing criminal happened. I looked at him and said the thing I had been holding since the video call. "You knew." His silence answered before his mouth did. My mother snapped. "Mark only knew there were some messy reimbursements." Paige looked from one parent to the other, stunned. "You told me Nora had barely anything to do with this year's event." My mother finally looked at her, and in that look, I saw the whole structure of our family. Lies arranged by convenience, defended by whoever benefited most. Denise pointed a finger at me. "You're trying to ruin your own mother over paperwork." I laughed once, without humor. "No, I'm refusing to save a woman who laughed when I was humiliated and then kept using my name to make herself look respectable." My mother's eyes filled, but now the tears looked less polished and more furious. "After everything I did for you," that sentence, I cut in, "is exactly why we're here. Everything with you is debt. Meals are debt. Help is debt. Love is debt. And whenever I ask for basic respect, you send me the bill." Denise tried one last angle, the ugliest and truest. "People donate because this looks like a good family, Because your mother is warm and Paige is charming, and you, she jabbed a finger toward me, you look serious and competent. You make people trust us. We needed you to act like part of the family. Paige sucked in a breath. My mother snapped, Denise! But it was too late. There it was, stripped bare. Not daughter, asset, optics, credibility. I felt strangely calm. Thank you, I said. That's the most honest thing anyone in this family has said to me in years. I told them then what I had done before they arrived. I had already sent Eleanor Pike a formal note resigning from all involvement. I had also forwarded enough documentation to justify an independent review of the event accounts, specifically to protect myself from liability. I did not accuse anyone of crimes. I simply documented irregularities and withdrew consent for further use of my work and name. My mother stared at me like she'd never seen me before. How could you do that to your own family? She whispered. I answered, how could all of you build this on my back and still laugh when I was handed nothing at your table? My father finally sank onto the edge of the chair near the console and said, very quietly, I should have stopped this years ago. It might have moved me if it hadn't come after the paperwork failed. Paige started crying then, not loud, not dramatic, just the stunned cry of somebody realizing the family story she lived inside wasn't true. She looked at me and said, I didn't know. I believed that part. But innocence and benefit are not the same thing. I told her, you didn't ask. Then I opened my front door and said the sentence I had practiced in my head all week without knowing it. You don't get to call it love when what you really mean is access. Take your papers and go. My mother didn't move at first. Denise did, muttering that I was vindictive. My father gathered the forms with shaking hands. Paige was the last one out. At the threshold, she looked back like she wanted me to tell her this could still be fixed before Christmas. I didn't. Some things should not be fixed quickly. Some things should finally be allowed to break. The fallout was faster than any of them expected, and that was the part people from good families never understand. Once image is all that has been holding things together, truth doesn't have to scream to do damage. It just has to stand there. Eleanor Pike did exactly what competent people do when someone withdraws under liability concerns. She paused the event, brought in an outside accountant, and notified the board that all scholarship-related expenses would be reviewed before another dollar moved. Within 10 days, the Bennett Mercer Holiday House Tour was officially postponed. By the second week of December, postponed became restructured under independent oversight, which was polite community language for Linda and Denise had lost control. My Aunt Denise resigned from the Women's Civic Board before she could be removed, then quietly repaid a chunk of expenses after the review flagged reimbursements she couldn't justify. My mother was asked to step down as public chair of the scholarship committee while procedures were updated, which sounded graceful enough on paper but landed exactly the way it should in town. The Christmas card photo never happened that year. Half the relatives didn't want to be in the same room, and the other half were suddenly too busy pretending they had always thought Linda could be a bit much. My father called me twice and left voicemails that were, for once, about me and not a task. He admitted he had let my mother and Denise use me because it was easier than confronting them, and because somewhere along the line, he had started confusing peace with silence. I didn't call back right away. Apologies that arrive only after public collapse are not worthless, but they are not enough on their own either. Paige asked to meet me for coffee a few days before Christmas. I almost said no. Then I remembered that unlike the others, she had at least looked shocked by the truth instead of offended by it. So I met her at a little bakery in Old City. She came without makeup, without excuses, and without the Bennett family script. She told me she had spent her whole life assuming our mother's version of us was reality, that I was independent, hard to read, fine, that she was the one who needed extra attention, that the family event was Mom's thing with a little help from me. She said, "I thought favoritism looked like being loved more. I didn't realize it also looked like making you carry things I never had to notice." That was the first apology in the whole mess that didn't sound like self-defense. I told her I wasn't ready to rebuild a sister relationship overnight. She nodded and said, "I know. I just didn't want to leave you with nothing but their version of me, too." That mattered. Sometimes healing isn't a grand reunion. Sometimes it's one person deciding to stop lying because the lie benefits them. By New Year's, I had turned down every request to just come talk as a family. There was no final movie scene reconciliation in a softly lit living room, no group hug, no miracle roast dinner where everyone suddenly became emotionally literate. What happened instead was smaller, slower, and more honest. I spent Christmas in Philadelphia with Tessa and 3 friends from work, eating lasagna off mismatched plates and laughing so hard at midnight that my face hurt. A board member from the scholarship committee, someone who had seen my transition notes and the way I handled the mess without public theatrics, recommended me for a major winter installation project at a restored opera house. I got the contract in January. The irony wasn't lost on me. The family that treated me like I should be grateful for a chair at their table ended up losing a whole local empire of holiday prestige because they couldn't manage one simple thing: basic respect. Months later, my mother mailed me a handwritten letter. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A real letter. She said loneliness had forced her to confront what applause had been doing for her for years. She admitted she had loved being admired more than she had loved being honest. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She said she understood if I never trusted her the same way again. That was the first thing she had ever written to me that didn't try to buy a quick ending. I still haven't decided what role, if any, she will have in my life. Boundaries are not revenge fantasies. They are maintenance for self-respect. But I won't lie. The consequences were satisfying. Denise lost the board seat she bragged about for a decade. My mother lost the flawless holiday image she had built at my expense. My father lost the illusion that staying quiet made him kind. And Paige lost the comfort of not knowing, which may have been the beginning of her becoming a better person. As for me, I lost something too. The last hope that if I worked hard enough, I could earn tenderness from people committed to misunderstanding me. And that loss, strangely enough, gave me my life back. So here's the lesson I took from all of it. Being the dependable one in a broken family can feel noble. But if your love is only welcomed when it comes with labor, you are not being cherished. You are being managed. The moment I stopped confusing access with affection, everything changed. So tell me honestly, if your own family humiliated you in public and only came running when they needed your name, your work, or your credibility, would you open the door? Our team is always working hard to create meaningful, engaging stories that resonate with viewers. We are committed to sharing fictional stories designed to deliver valuable lessons, inspiring messages, and educational content in a thoughtful and positive way. This script carries an important educational message about self-respect, emotional awareness, and the importance of healthy boundaries. It reminds viewers that true love and family support should never come with humiliation, and that personal growth often begins when we choose dignity, wisdom, and honesty.